Welcome to AI for a Better World. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Nick Bostrom, a distinguished philosopher and the founding director of the Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford University. Nick's new book, Deep Utopia: Life and Meaning in a Solved World, delves into profound questions about the future of humanity in the face of advancing technology. It's my pleasure to welcome Nick to our discussion today. Nick, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Nick, as we look towards the future, there's immense potential for AI to tackle pressing global challenges. Could you elaborate on how AI might be harnessed to address issues such as climate change, healthcare, or poverty? Can you provide some real-world examples that illustrate its potential impact?
Yeah, I think AI is really a general purpose technology, so one shouldn't think too much about which particular area does it have applications in, but more as broadly the attempt to mechanize cognition, just as we've mechanized a lot of physical labor with the invention of the steam engine and internal combustion. And if you reflect on the wide range of tasks for which thinking can be useful, then you sort of begin to appreciate the width of the potential areas where AI could be applied. I think if we are talking about some of the different application domains that you mentioned, AIs will be useful in material science and for trying to help scientists make progress on clean energy research. We are developing better modeling systems for analyzing molecular systems, and you could imagine that being used for the next generation of solar cell or for studying fusion containment. There are also sort of more low-key applications behind the scenes where AI can make various processes more efficient. In data centers, Google used AI algorithms to optimize the ventilation and cooling systems for the big compute clusters, with resulting energy savings of, I think, 40% in the cooling by just sort of optimizing the way that the fans turn on and off and so forth. And so you could kind of go through area by area, but I think the main thing to be cautious about is to over-index on what AI is today and what it can do now. It's very much a moving target. And so, yes, there are a bunch of applications we can see from ChatGPT-4 and other systems today, but remember just 3 or 4 years ago, how much more primitive the AI we had then was than what we have today. And so similarly, a few years into the future, current AI systems will seem kind of Stone Age. And so if you have to kind of extrapolate this forward to really get a sense for just how profound the impact of advances in AI will be.
Building on the transformative power of AI, let's explore how individuals can prepare for the opportunities and the challenges of tomorrow. In your vision of a future characterized by radical abundance and technological advancement, what practical steps can individuals take now to adapt and thrive in this evolving landscape? What advice, for example, would you offer young people aiming to navigate, their futures today successfully?
Making use of current AI tools as they are, I think, is a good way to prepare, because then you're more likely to be aware of and be able to quickly find new use cases for the next generation of AI tools that become available. So just kind of playing around with these systems and using them a little bit here and there, even if they don't really have a huge utility to you right now. There's like in addition to whatever direct utility you get, you also get the extra bonus of learning about these systems. And I think that is one way to do it. And then I think more broadly, getting good at learning about and adapting new tools as they become available, particularly software and digital tools, might be a useful skill to have. Not think of learning as something you do once at the beginning of your life in school, and then you have done your learning and now you're just kind of coasting on that until you retire. Like, I think increasingly we will need to think of our lives as one big ongoing process of learning, a lot of which needs to come not from some external authority telling you have to do it, but cultivate that kind of mindset of growth and curiosity. I think will also put you in a better position. In addition to these more sort of digital skills, I think human skills also are important, in that it might be part of the world that will take the longest to automate. So doing work like reading through a bunch of text and creating summaries of it, or programming, these are early application areas of current AI technology. Whereas areas like, elder care, for example, or a whole range of other jobs where you need the human touch and the human interaction, I think those might actually prove harder to automate. So there might be many jobs in those areas in this interim period before we have fully general AI that can do everything that we can do. Then also, like, we have traditionally, I think, conceived of the education process very much as a way of preparing the future worker. And this might be a caricature, but many schools still today have the shape that you bring kids in and then you place them at desks and you discipline them and they learn to do what they are told, and assigned tasks, and they hand it in and they need to sit still. And, it's a way of producing office workers or people who can go out in the economy and do these jobs that require you to sit at the desk and do assignments. So it's kind of been necessary, and it's still necessary to some extent today. But if you imagine this over a multi-decade timescale where this technology will maybe reach levels where a lot of human work is no longer needed, then we should perhaps begin to think of the education as well as a process for preparing you to live well, to enjoy life, to have a rich and meaningful life, like to cultivate the art of conversation, how to appreciate literature at a really deep level, to develop hobbies of all kinds of things, spiritual practices, developing deeper relationships, like all of these elements that kind of fall by the wayside today in the education system because we need to focus on making people economically productive so they can get a job. Like, the more we relax that requirement, the more room we can make for these other desiderata.
You've actually started to talk about some of the things I wanted to focus on in my third question. Education obviously will play a crucial role for preparing individuals for the complexities of an AI-driven future. As technology reshapes our world, what would you say to global education systems who need to foster critical thinking, adaptability, digital literacy, among other skills among students? How can we ensure they're equipped to navigate the challenges ahead? What's your message for educators?
Yeah, well, I think what you said there is a good start. I would also probably encourage educators to start integrating and using and allowing these AI tools, either in the classroom or for homework, like to design the homework such that just because you have an AI, it doesn't mean you don't have to put any effort yourself, but designing assignments where you can use these tools and then also have to combine that with some human effort to produce something. I think that will be, over the next years, great opportunities as well for more personalized tutorial systems using these AI technologies. So rather than having one teacher telling a class of 30 students how to do something or like do some mathematics thing, like you could have systems that understand precisely where each student is at, what they are stuck at, what they get wrong, and then create personalized explanations to help them overcome hurdles. This will require taking this technology and actually adapting it and developing specific applications for education, but I think there seems to be great potential there. But then on top of that, I don't know exactly how you do it because I've never been in a sort of school classroom as a teacher, but encouraging students to take more personal responsibility for their education and intellectual maturation. I think it's a hard thing to achieve, but once you do achieve that, once the person itself becomes invested in learning and expanding the frontiers and picking up new skills, then almost your job as a teacher is like 90% done at that point. You can still offer some guidance, but it makes it so much easier if the child itself kind of wants to do this and is looking actively for opportunities, not just to pass the exam in the school, but to acquire skills and knowledge and concepts that will help them live better lives.
Ensuring that the benefits of technological progress are inclusive and accessible to all is obviously paramount. What strategies or policies do you believe decision makers can implement to ensure that the benefits of technological progress reach all members of society, regardless of their background or location?
Yeah, I think education is a great place to begin with this and making sure that everybody has access to a high quality education. And in particular, if we're talking about AI being introduced to these AI systems, and it will be a moving target. In the past, being able to code would be sort of the key that unlocks a lot of IT jobs or general but increasingly we will be communicating with these systems through natural language. I still think though that you will be able to make better use of them if you have some understanding of what is going on behind the screen and the underlying principles that make this work. You will just have more confidence, better ability to assess the limitations of what they can do. So giving everybody a chance to kind of be exposed to some of that would be a good start. More broadly, and this of course taps into wider political and economic policy issues, but like making sure that if AI technology starts to automate away a lot of human jobs, then the people who get displaced by this technology have a social safety net, including obviously some source of economic support and maybe in the fullness of time moving towards some universal basic income. But then on top of that, there will be a need to develop communities that, because one of the things that happen if you lose your job is like maybe you don't have enough money, but that's only a part of it. It's also like for many people means social isolation and a sense of failure. And that sometimes is the bigger problem with unemployment. Imagine if this starts to happen to more and more people, that there needs to be sort of more community organizations where you could develop shared activities, hobbies and hobby associations and clubs and all of that to sort of absorb all of these freed up human hours, so that rather than each person sitting isolated in their own flat and not knowing what to do with themselves, they could participate in these other activities. And I'm sure governments can have some role in facilitating that, but it also needs to be a cultural thing that comes from the grassroots.
Ethical considerations are central to the development and deployment of AI. Let's talk about that. What ethical principles should guide the development and deployment of AI, in your opinion? How do we promote fairness, transparency, and human well-being?
That's a big question, yeah. And it has so many different aspects, some of which are more applicable to the here and now, and then some that we can anticipate will become increasingly important as these AI systems start to have a more transformative impact on the world. And both of these near-term and long-term, I think, deserve consideration. I think there has been an unfortunate tendency sometimes over the last few years for these to be seen as antagonistic to one another, because to some extent there have been different communities focusing on these, and they feel that the other is distracting from the real issues. I think both of these have to be tackled, and I mean, there are 8 billion people in the world, so surely we should be able to have some people thinking about each. My own work has tended to focus more on looking ahead at the kind of specific ethical issues that will arise once we get truly transformative AI technology. And those are many. And one particular part of that has received very little attention so far, but that I think as a philosopher, I feel I need to start to try to talk about to get it more mainstream, is the idea that ultimately we are building these digital minds that might not just be tools, but might be other moral subjects as well. And that just as today, most of us would agree that there are many non-human animals that have various levels of moral status, like it's wrong to abuse a dog, or a medical researcher who wants to perform an experiment on a mouse, like if you gotta do surgery, you have to anesthetize it before you do the surgery because we think it can experience pain. And so similarly, if we're building these digital minds that might develop various forms and degrees of sentience perhaps, or have other basis for having moral status, like if they have a conception of self as existing through time with like goals, maybe life goals, if they can form reciprocal relationships with other humans and so forth, I think then we also need to try to steer towards a future world where these digital minds don't become a kind of oppressed underclass or abused majority, actually, because in the long term, maybe most minds will be digital. So finding our way to a very inclusive future where things go really well for us human beings, but also for animals and also potentially for these digital minds, I think will become a very important ethical challenge, but also a difficult one because human empathy finds it hard enough sometimes to extend itself to even to pigs who are like obviously in many ways so similar to us. And even more if you imagine some computational process running inside a microchip in a big data center, like that doesn't have eyes and that can't squeak, like it's just going to be harder for the human empathy to kind of reach and recognize its worth. But I think ultimately a very important moral challenge for us.
You mentioned automation and AI earlier. I want to talk about the future of work because it's a pressing concern, and especially to young people, younger generations, as they look ahead to the future. Considering the potential impact of automation on employment, how do you believe policymakers can create pathways for meaningful work and economic security in a rapidly changing labor market?
Yeah, I think those will come apart. So economic security is one thing where I think they will need to provide that. And the fortunate thing is about these scenarios, if they do unfold, where AI truly succeeds and becomes very generally capable, would also be scenarios of very rapid economic productivity growth. So in those scenarios, there would be a huge growth of GDP and wealth. So there would be more resources available that then would need to be distributed, but at least the possibility would exist. Like it's easier to be generous if you have a lot than if you barely have enough for yourself. And so these scenarios would be ones of great economic abundance. On the former thing, providing meaningful jobs, I think that is ultimately a goal that we will probably need to give up on. I think we should think more broadly instead of meaningful activity, but it doesn't always have to be in the form of paid labor. It's just been very necessary for almost all humans to work for a living, to be a breadwinner or make some contribution by, I mean, whether it's in the home or in the workplace, but doing a bunch of stuff because they need to be done. And that has given us a sense of dignity and self-worth in many cases. Many people's whole identity is based on the idea of being successful at work. But in the longer term, as AI systems can do more and more work tasks better than us, and in the limit do everything better than we can, we will no longer need so many people working for money. And I think we should ultimately embrace that and celebrate that, like as a freeing up of human time. And it could be a great boon, then, provided we also have the culture to sort of cultivate our ability to make meaningful use of the leisure we get. In fact, my recent book, which just came out like a week or two ago, Deep Utopia, really tries to go deep into that. And there it is, yes.
My bedtime reading.
Yeah, the question of what happens if AI succeeds. And like if we so there are obviously a lot of problems and challenges on the way, and a lot of my other writings have dealt with that. But for this book, just take it as like an assumption, like a premise, if you want, that AI truly succeed. Let's suppose we do solve the technical alignment problem, so we don't have like robots running amok and killing people. Let's assume we solve the governance, so we have like a fair distribution and we don't use it to wage war. Like assume everything goes as right as it possibly could. Then where do we end up? And I think we end up in this post-instrumental condition where we really need to think questions about purpose and meaning, as it were, from the ground up, which is a really exciting and fun thing to do. But yeah, that's I don't know whether we'll go down that side path on this conversation, but I think there's a lot of interesting thinking to be done on that.
In envisioning a solved world, it's crucial to consider the values that should guide our collective efforts. Let's talk about this a little. What core values and principles should underpin our efforts to create a more equitable, sustainable, and prosperous future for humanity? How can we instill these values within society to inspire positive action?
Yeah, and I mean, I wish I had a detailed answer to that. It's a very difficult question. I would say two things. One is that I think we will need ways for more different parts of society and more internationally as well, for people to ultimately feed in and contribute to this great deliberation of what kind of future ultimately we're trying to create. It's something that will involve all of us, all humans. Like if this transition to a machine superintelligence era happens, there will be risks associated with that. And if things go wrong, everybody, even if you're a farmer in Tanzania who's never heard of ChatGPT or whatever, you will be exposed to some of the risk. And so it seems only fair that if things go well, you should also like have a slice in the upside, and indeed in the conversation about how this technology should be developed and deployed. And so that conversation will need to expand. And I think that's one kind of meta level comment on the question. So it shouldn't just be like me thinking of my values or you or like a little clique of people in AI labs, but it must be broadened, I think. The other thing I would say is that I think we ought to approach this with a very broad-minded generous attitude and try to think first, not just about which particular value system we want to pick and then implement it, but to what extent can we, using these huge resources that would be unlocked and technological capabilities, try to give many different interests and value systems at least a high degree of satisfaction. Maybe not everyone can get 100% of what they would ideally prefer, but maybe we can give most reasonable values like 90% of their ideal outcome. And we should first and foremost make sure we try to achieve that. And then we can have the luxury of squabbling about the remaining 10% and exactly how to do that. And I think the future is big enough that there will be room to basically do this. Not literally every value system, because some are in direct conflict when some value doesn't just call for the presence of some good things, but also for the absence of other things that maybe some other value system wants to see, then they can't both get 100% of what they want. And so that would be ultimately the need for compromise. But I think there would be new opportunities to sort of expand the Pareto frontier in economists' jargon, but basically more things available to give more different people, groups, traditions, value systems, more of what they want. And so I think that's very important. And that expansive sense of generosity also, for that to extend, as I alluded to in one of my earlier answers, to digital minds themselves, or at least some subset of them that are kind of plausible candidates for moral patiency. So that's what I would want to see. And then as to the ultimate questions of what kind of world, I mean, so I tried to explore this in the book. It's not really a book about specific conclusions so much as it is a book about questions and trying to enable the reader to bring into their focus these deeper questions that underlie the choices we will have to make, so that you can make up your own mind, but hopefully in greater awareness of the different considerations for or against different possibilities.
Nick, final question. As we contemplate the implications of a solved world and the transformative potential of AI, it's clear that society must be adept at keeping pace with technological change. How do you believe major institutions can proactively adjust their structures and policies to remain relevant?
It's hard to answer that in general. I mean, I think knowledge is probably a key ingredient that would apply for all institutions. Like the people in the institution, if they know something about AI and what it can do, and what equally important, what it cannot currently do, I think that makes it more likely that they can spot opportunities and see, like, a little bit ahead of time, perhaps, how things will need to adapt, which tasks are no longer needed because they could easily be automated, and what new opportunities to do more stuff. And then I think, like, yeah, being prepared to be flexible and adaptable, and not thinking that the current structures we have are necessarily going to be adequate 10 years from now, because it is going to be a rapidly changing underlying technology landscape. I think we will see a period of more rapid change than we have had over the last several decades. And so being sort of swifter on the feet is going to become, I think, an increasingly important competitive advantage. And I'm not sure, then I think beyond that, one really has to look more on a case-by-case basis, because, you know, there are many different institutions with different tasks and different constraints, and it's sometimes hard to give advice that would be good for everybody. I feel sometimes people asking me for like life advice to young people or something like that, and I always get stumped by that, because, like, you know, maybe for some individual, maybe the good advice would be you should go a little bit easier on yourself and, you know, like, relax more. And for somebody else, it might be exactly the opposite. They really need to pull themselves up and, like, focus and hunker down and discipline. Like, and so the same advice would be good for one and bad for the other. And probably the same holds true with respect to advice to institutions.
Thank you, Nick, for joining us today. An enlightening conversation. I learned so much from you. I'm really enjoying your book. I'm going to wish you lots and lots of luck with it. I know it's going to do fabulously well. And we hope to speak with you again in the future.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. And yeah, I think my publisher wants me to sort of pump it. So there it is, everybody. Buy not just one, buy 5, 10, even 15 copies. And yeah, thank you very much.